Hello and welcome to Unity of Las Vegas. My name is Lisa Lee and I'm really excited that you're here. Today we are in our final week of a very exciting series entitled Sacred Places in Liminal Spaces. And in it we have been exploring what it is to live in this time between worlds in a way where we are centered, aware, and perfectly poised to be the co-creators of this next phase of evolution on the planet. So today's lesson is entitled Betwixt and Between, Love's Living Threshold. So living in liminal time, it's important for us to begin to take a look at how we can be more conscious about the thresholds in our lives. And so what do we really mean here when we say this word threshold? Well, the dictionary tells us that it is the magnitude or intensity that must be exceeded for a certain reaction, phenomenon, result, or condition to occur or to be manifested. So there's quite a bit of little heat there. So now we have two kinds of thresholds. We have the unconscious kind and the conscious kind. So most of us cross thresholds several times a day back and forth. We go from one room to the other. We go from inside the house to outside of the house. And there are nutrients that cross the threshold of our cell walls to nourish us on an ongoing basis every nanosecond. So we have a series of unconscious thresholds that we experience regularly. And then there are also conscious thresholds. And most of us are aware of rites of passage. We have weddings. We have carrying the bride across the threshold of a new home, spiritual initiations. And the one that we're going to be focusing on today is co-creation. Now, co-creation, we're being called to be more and more conscious as the universe is alluring us into this partnered co-creation, where we are bringing something from the unmanifest into the manifest. So in this, we find that to become love's living threshold is to gain the trust of the manifest and the unmanifest, to be their conscious conduit. So this is something that I actually was given in a poem a couple of weeks ago. And when I'm writing, very often what I am writing becomes my teacher as well. So I have been very curious about, what does this mean to gain the trust of the unmanifest and the manifest? How might we go about doing that? Well, to begin taking a look at that, we can look at what are the stages really of conscious manifestation. And the first stage, we can say, most of us who have grown up through the traditional church are used to a form of prayer which is structured more as praying to. We pray to a God that is outside of ourselves. We pray for something that we don't have. We have the sense that we're missing something, and we pray for something outside of ourselves that's missing. And then stage 2 is to pray from. So those of us who have done any type of self-help work are more familiar with this type of prayer, where you're really, and it's very similar also to the movie The Secret, which you may have seen several years ago. And in this case, you begin to pray from. And what that means is that you really have a sense of the divine being inside of you. You have a sense of whatever it is that you're asking for already being in existence. And so you pray from the full awareness of that. And that has a very powerful effect, and we can really create a beautiful life that way. And today I want to talk about a brand new stage, actually, stage 3. And stage 3 is telling the story of the universe. So to tell a story of someone is to really understand their heart and their essence. So I have a beautiful friend in our community called Kathy, and it's possible, to tell her story, just happen to know a few facts about her, who her parents were, where she was born and raised, who she's married and who her children are. But if I were to really tell her story, I would talk more about her heart, that she is a beautiful woman of service, that she is a very deeply spiritual woman, and very wise in a very beautiful and humble way, that she also experiences the veil being very thin, and she has a way of really walking with the angels and living in that consciousness. So to tell her story would be more to speak about these parts of her, which are her essence of who she is and her heart. And so to tell the story of the universe is also to know the heart of the universe and how it lives through time and across its many thresholds. And so it's also having really this intimate experience with the cycles of death and rebirth. So in telling the story of the universe in this way, we really gain the trust of the manifest and the manifest to really be their conscious conduit into the third dimension. So we are custodians of deep and ancient thresholds. In the human face, you see the potential and the miracle of undying possibility. So to understand this fully, we need to go and visit the grandmothers. And I had a beautiful experience with my friend Sandy Hart, who sent me a video of her interview with grandmother Flor de Mayo, who was a beautiful medicine woman. And there were several questions that were asked, and one of them had to do with how do we navigate our karmic inheritance? That we've inherited various traits, various ways of being, both positive and negative from our ancestors, our parents, our grandparents, and great-grandparents, and so on. And then she spoke about this term in Spanish, which is called rastro. I don't know if I'm saying that exactly right. She had a very beautiful way of saying that. And what it means is bringing something from before life. And it's really about looking at ourselves as whole beings across time, accessing the memories of our past lives. And you may remember, bring up memory of being in war or living a monastic life, or being born into a wealthy family or a poor family, or a lifetime where you had no spiritual awareness at all, or maybe even a time where you lived in different galaxies. And she says, we are children of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So it's really being able to see ourselves as these magnificent beings that are in existence across time, or existence in deep time, as I like to say. And it really brings forth a beautiful compassion for ourselves and also for all of humanity, that to have all of these varying experiences. And also she speaks of the seed keepers and these individuals on the earth, and all of us have aunties or grandmas that kind of do this, and there's this practice of saving and protecting seeds from one season to the next. And just in this idea, we are really holding the past, present, and future in this particular practice, and seeing the earth, larger than what is happening in the here and now, but seeing it across time, past, present, and future. And it's really from this larger holding across time, across galaxies, and this deep connection that we can have with our biological brothers and sisters, with our geological life here on the planet, that we can be trusted by the universe to be this conscious conduit between the unmanifest and the manifest. So I'd like to speak to you now about 3 pillars related to being love's living threshold. And so I want you to think of these pillars not as something that's kind of like very material in the way that we would think about it in architecture, but more of pillars of light. I had this experience with Jeff Carrera, working with him, and you may have noticed that it's really difficult to actually make yourself become enlightened. And so he used to have this thing called wormhole inquiries. So ways of thinking and imagining that bring us close to these wormholes in consciousness, hoping that we can just fall in and it'll take us to another way of being. So it's very similar with these pillars of light, that they're kind of pointers and indications of how we can begin to be these love's living threshold on the planet. So the first one I want to talk about is being love's living threshold is a first-person experience. So earlier when we were talking about threshold, we were talking about it more in a third-person experience, crossing over a threshold where you're talking about something outside of yourself. So this is allowing something from the world of spirit to flow through you into the manifest world where you are actually the threshold yourself. So going back to this definition, the magnitude or intensity that must be exceeded for a certain reaction, phenomenon, result, or condition to occur or to be manifested. Just being in that elevated consciousness that would allow for this amazing transformation to take place between the manifest and the unmanifest. So to touch on how we might become this, let's do a really quick meditation. So I invite you to close your eyes and imagine that you are standing in the doorway that leads out of your home. In this doorway, you can sense a difference in temperature from inside and from outside. Notice that you can also hear the sounds that are coming from the inside, and notice how they are different from the sounds coming from outside. Simultaneously, you hear the voice of the birds. From the inside, you may hear the hum of the refrigerator. Notice that the air smells different. There may be a difference in humidity. In this doorway, you can sense two different realms at the same time. So are you inside or outside? You are neither and both. And by simply leaning in one direction or the other, you can mostly be inside or outside. Like the doorway, our human body is a liminal space between mystery and the visible world. You are the threshold between what is seen and what is just now coming into being. You are an opening, allowing the divine to access the world through your uniqueness. Stay right here for a moment as you emerge free. And sense into what is flowing through you now as this doorway. You're not just standing in the doorway, you are the space of flow through. Life recreating itself through you in your distinct flavor. You are the liminal space where mystery meets the visible world. The evolutionary impulse creates through you and as you. Thomas Merton says, "Such is the door that ends all doors. The unbuilt, the impossible, the undestroyed, through which all fires go when they have gone out. The door of emptiness, of nowhere, of no place for a self, which cannot be entered by a self, and therefore is of no use to someone who is going somewhere. Is it a door at all? The door of no door. We are not it, but that is it, the not being it. It is a door without a sign. There is no use asking for it, yet you must ask. Who or what?" So I invite you to take one more breath inside of this liminality that you are as a threshold. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. And so the second pillar of light we'll be talking about is direct knowing. So direct knowing is a conversation between trust and surrender. So direct knowing really is the ultimate practice that we want to establish. And what is being honed is a deepening of trust in your own intuition and how you are spoken to directly by the divine or God, apart from what any societal messages may be there or even dogma from a particular religion. You really are learning to live from a deeper governance. And as you can imagine, as you begin to really emerge into this way of really living and this deep trust that you have in the divine speaking to you directly, the ego will definitely have a role here. And the important thing is not to make the ego the enemy, because the ego is there to really help to hone this understanding of you and this relationship between you and your intuition. So the ego really has two voices. The first one is the ego will tell you that you don't know and will cause you to doubt your intuition. And so this going back and forth of noticing that this voice is from the ego and this is not your intuition is part of what's really necessary in honing your muscle. So the other voice that you will hear from your ego is it tells you that you do know. And so you become very hardened and crystallized in your belief structure. And very often you can see people who are in this way of being that they become fundamentalists. And very often we can look at people in various religions, and traditional religions has fundamentalists, but fundamentalists exist in New Thought. They exist in the educational system and everywhere, because it's just this ability that we have, or just wanting to really hold on to something, or to a thought, to a belief structure beyond its life. We like squeeze the life out of it by holding on to it and not allowing it to really evolve to what wants to be next. And so what we do really to manage what the ego is trying to hone here is that we allow all that is flowing through you, through your intuition, to live at the altar of surrender. So however beautiful your intuition is telling you life is, or belief structures that are coming through your intuition, being willing to regularly surrender them so they can continue to be made new, so they can become something that is living. And you really want to be able to keep it alive just by allowing spirit to hone it in this way on an ongoing basis. And there really is a difference between personal confidence and spiritual confidence. So personal confidence is this wonderful way that we have as humans of building a skill set. And we get better and better at a variety of different things. And we can build resumes based on our skill set. And that's a beautiful thing to do in the world. And then there's also a spiritual confidence, which really is transpersonal. And that's really what we're talking about with this direct knowing, where you can feel the strength of a message, which is so powerful and beautiful, which really transcends your own personal confidence. And you have this sense that this is coming from a deeper place in you. So the third pillar of light we want to talk about is dare to fall in love with the impossible. And I always like using this word impossible when we think of manifesting. If I were given the opportunity to rewrite the Bible, there is a beautiful line that says, all things are possible with God. And I would add in there, but first they will seem impossible. Because very often that is the case, that what has not shown up yet in the world appears that there's no way that that can actually happen. And one of my favorite quotes from Alice in Wonderland is, sometimes I believe as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. And truly, she's a visionary, in that movie. It's one of my favorite movies, where she can really see in her own mind's eye and hold something till it becomes a real palpable, alive, strong possibility for the world. And it's very similar to what in the Bible where during the Annunciation from Mary, when she said, may it be unto me according to your word. And, being able to see something that is so alive for you, that you have so much passion for, that you're willing to really be transformed at depth so that whatever this is can really come into the world. So I love what Teilhard de Chardin says, because he really embodied this way of being, of passion, living very passionately, and just giving yourself to that, so that this is something that can become ultimately alive in the world through your own energy. This is a little bit about the heat that we were talking about in that definition of the threshold. This passion and this love for something that you see that is so amazingly beautiful, in your mind's eye, that there is enough strength for it to actually come into the world and be a living reality here. So Teilhard was a Jesuit priest and a paleontologist who brought the worlds of science and religion together, becoming a forerunner in our present-day understanding of spiritual evolution. In Teilhard's worldview, humanity is spiritually pioneering an extended consciousness that will lay the foundation for a future grounded in the sovereignty of love. And what seems impossible for our limited perception becomes possible through love. And as love, we are this threshold of another universe, and in this awareness become authors of the impossible. And one of my favorite quotes of his is, "Truth has only to appear in one single mind for it to be impossible for anything to prevent it from spreading universally and setting everything ablaze. The day will come when, after harnessing the ether, the winds, the tides, gravitation, we shall harness for God the energies of love. And on that day, for the second time in the history of the world, man will have discovered fire." And I say, on this day, we are knowing in our heart of hearts that love is ever born in me anew. And so it is. Thank you so very much for being with us today at Unity of Las Vegas. Blessings on your day.